The official cyclone season is 1 month away, but many mining, oil and gas companies are already well advanced in cyclone preparation planning. According to the Bureau of Meteorology (BOM), the average number of cyclones has traditionally been between 7 and 11 a year. However, it now forecasts there will be fewer cyclones, but those that do form will be of much greater intensity. Andrew Burton is the resources manager with the Bureau, which has commercial agreements with many resources companies onshore and offshore, from the northwest of Western Australia, across the Northern Territory, and to the northeast of Queensland. There's always uncertainty involved in forecasting, and I think when it comes to tropical cyclones, people appreciate there can be a fair bit of uncertainty, he said. The challenge these days is to be able to measure exactly how much uncertainty there is, so we can present worst-case scenarios that either a community, or an industry, or a company is facing. Cyclones can be very unpredictable, changing their path or track rapidly, but new technology used by BOM alleviates that. We can predict out to 4 days the track of a cyclone as accurately as we used to be able to predict them just out to 12 hours in the mid-1980s, Mr. Burton said. Miners battened down hatches to ride out Cyclonus in 2007. Severe tropical cyclone George crossed the Pilbara coast in northwest Western Australia near Port Hedland. It continued into the interior and wiped out a temporary railway camp, and 2 workers were killed. Cyclone George flattened Dungas and 2 people died when the weather system swept through an iron ore mine site in the Washington Pilbara. The coroner found the temporary accommodation Dungas the workers were in did not have the correct cyclonic wind rating, and made a number of recommendations to change the way such buildings were approved. Pilbara Minerals was exploring for lithium in the same region at the time, but had already evacuated its team from the exploration camp well before the cyclone hit. The Pilgangoor lithium mine, which is in a Category D cyclone zone, is now under construction. Pilbara Minerals Chief Executive Ken Brinston said there were 100 workers on site, and that number was expected to grow to 400 over the next 8 months during peak construction period. From the outset, we've constructed facilities that are rated to cope with a D-zone region, which means we're basically dealing with the biggest of the cyclones, he said. So the buildings are well secured, well tied down, they're strong and able to act as shelters for workers if a cyclone comes through. Pilbara Minerals evacuated workers from its exploration camp at Pilgangoor before Cyclone George struck in 2007. Then there's also the procedures we work with before and during the cyclone season, making sure the teams are well educated about the warnings coming through. Mr. Brinston said this included keeping abreast of weather events and making sure the company was receiving daily, if not hourly reports, from the Bureau. We buy a sophisticated service from them to make sure that we're well informed and get a very specific account of what's occurring, he said. Make a cyclone plan, then stick to it in the same way that a chain is said to only be as strong as its weakest link. A cyclone preparation plan will only work if it is adhered to. Peter Emmett is a principal consultant with emergency management company Dynamic Global and has seen procedural failure on oil and gas rigs twice in the past few years. The company had evacuated the non-essential personnel, but they hadn't followed their own plan to evacuate all personnel off the offshore facilities, he said. They had people sheltering in place in the mess and accommodation facilities during the cyclone, so thankfully it wasn't a Category 5. In the end, the workers weren't put at risk. FIFO chef ready to fly back into next cyclone season. Head chef David Gilmore has been working on offshore oil rigs and floating facilities for decades. He has weathered almost a dozen cyclones and has seen how the safety culture has changed. Many years ago I was on a facility, and the boss wouldn't let us get off when we should. Then we had to be evacuated, and that was a very scary experience, he said. The evacuation helicopter couldn't land on the deck, and the facility was swaying 15 to 20 meters either side. We were told, if we missed grabbing on to get into the helicopter and we fell into the ocean, it was hasta la vista baby. Mr. Gilmore and his team have been preparing for cyclone season for months, moving heavier objects to floor level and running through drills. I'm flying back into another cyclone season in a couple of weeks, so I'll probably end up in another cyclone, but I'm quite comfortable with it, he said. It's my duty, especially at my skill level, to help the new people on board and anyone else who's not prepared for a cyclone.